A very good evening to you and welcome to the most comprehensive bulletin in the country. This is certainly KTN Prime.
Yes, thank you for joining us this Wednesday. We hope you had a good day. And doing the sign language interpretation for us is William Silla. Well, it is the eve of two major events, one right here at home and the other thousands of miles away.
In exactly 24 hours' time, the biggest football extravaganza will kick off in Brazil, setting the stage for 1 month of high drama.
Absolutely. And right here in Kenya, a perhaps not so dramatic event, but no less significant for many Kenyans. The national budget, the largest in the country's history, will be presented in Parliament.
Well, we have a comprehensive coverage of both events here on KTN Prime. But first, let's start with a contest of a different kind.
That's right. We begin here in Nairobi, where members of parliament seeking to impeach Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru stepped up their bid with an early morning meeting. The
author of the motion, Mithika Linturi, declared that he would not withdraw it as demanded by a section of his colleagues and members of the executive.
KTN's Asha Milu now reports on the move that has exposed the political intrigues behind the growing appetite for impeaching public officials.
She was sworn into one of the most important dockets in government. But now Anne Waiguru is in the middle of a political storm, threatening to split the president's coalition with his deputy. Igembe South MP Mithika Linturi, who was to table a motion for the impeachment of Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru, met signatories of his motion in a closed-door breakfast meeting. But just some minutes into the meeting,
maybe the head of state must have talked to them to drop the motion. And that is what they are pleading with the members to do that.
Asanteni sana.
Pressure from the executive to have the motion withdrawn had left URP and TNA MPs on opposite sides of the fence.
The Jubilee Coalition as a family have urged our colleague, our member, the Honorable Linturi, to drop that motion.
TNA MPs are said to have pushed for the withdrawal of the motion, but their URP counterparts had their reservations. The back and forth, however, ended in this.
Hawa wenye mswanda, sababu nimesema mara mingi, wamesema wao wako tayari kusonga mbele na mswanda huu, na huo ndio msimamo uliopo na hakuna mambo yamebadilika.
Political scientist Mutahi Ngunyi reads more into this impeachment motion.
Linturi is not a prisoner of conscience. He is a prisoner of contract. He is not doing this because he feels very strongly about the constitution or the whatever abrogation Anne Waiguru has committed. But he's doing this because my thinking is a political project he's executing on behalf of somebody.
But why would a member of the president's political party target one of the president's key appointees?
We are having cracks within TNA, and we also have serious cracks also within URP. Uhuru and Ruto decided to depoliticize politics. And the problem with politics is that it abhors a vacuum, pretty much like power. And the politics then shifted to a different space. So that if the cabinet secretaries are not political in nature, and they don't do politics, the politics was appropriated by the governors, now it's been appropriated by Parliament. It's simply because these two leaders said we shall be the only politicians. Big mistake.
Once the motion is tabled in Parliament on Tuesday, the Speaker will form a special committee to probe the allegations. 10 days after, the committee will give its report and the House will vote on the impeachment motion. There is no doubt that if Anne Waiguru is successfully impeached, it will be a major blow to President Uhuru Kenyatta and his government. But what Kenyans will be waiting to observe is how the president will handle the political storm that will follow if this motion does sail through. A political storm that could see the president on the chopping block himself. Asha Milu, KTN, Nairobi.
Let's cross to the other side of the political divide, where CORD leader Raila Odinga sought to close ranks with Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero. The former Prime Minister says the CORD team will remain behind Kidero because they sponsored him in the last general election. Our senior political reporter Sam Ogina examines the visit that came 2 weeks after Kidero was booed at Raila's homecoming rally at Uhuru Park here in Nairobi.
The Orange Party leader Raila Odinga's courtesy call to Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero's office comes amid growing antagonism between the Nairobi governor and his sponsoring party, ODM. Kidero rattled ODM by openly declaring support for Migori County Governor Okoth Obado of PDP party, ODM's rival party in the region, after a high court had nullified Obado's election. Raila led a strong ODM delegation to Kidero's office. The governor has been perceived by some of ODM diehards as being too friendly to the Jubilee administration. But after nearly 3 hours of closed-door meeting, the former PM handed Kidero's leadership a stamp of approval.
Nataka bwana Kidero afanye kazi yake. Kidero alichaguliwa na chama cha CORD. Yeye ni gavana yetu. Na sisi tuna imani na yeye.
The remarks coming against the backdrop of a Supreme Court hearing of Kidero's challenge against an appeal court ruling that nullified his election as governor.
Tumeongea na baba na tumeongea maneno za watu wa Nairobi. Na ametupatia mawaidha vile tunaweza kuendesha maneno ambazo zitaleta maendeleo hapa Nairobi.
The ex-premier admitted to differences between the Nairobi governor and his party.
Ni vizuri ishara kwamba governor ako hapa wa CORD awasalimie.
During his homecoming rally at Uhuru Park, the Nairobi governor was booed by Raila supporters without the ex-premier's intervention. Raila now says the sticking issues will be worked out internally within the party.
Sisi tunaweza kuwa na mambo yetu ya undani ya kinyumba, lakini hiyo ni ya undani ya kinyumba. Hili ingine hatutaki kuweka nje huko. Kwa hivyo yeye bwana Kidero amepewa jukumu, hawa wabunge wamepewa jukumu, kila mtu amepewa jukumu.
Kidero and Rongo MP Dalmas Otieno have lately been seen as the ODM rebels in the Nyanza region. The Rongo MP is widely expected to form a party to rival ODM's influence in the region. Samugina, KTN.
Well, it would seem that dialogue has been the theme all along, hasn't it?
Yes. Well, Raila says there is no rift. The question that we're asking you this evening, though, is whether you think that the ODM party has actually treated Evans Kidero unfairly in the recent past.
Well, you can send us your thoughts on 22155. That's the SMS line, or you can tweet me at Wilson_Mburu. You can tweet at Kachungira. We'll, of course, give you a poll result as we continue to give you the sample some of your views as the bulletin continues.
Budget 2014-2015.
And now let's go to our continuing coverage of the budget. Tonight, we do put the spotlight on education. That's right. Lofty promises have been made, such as the delivery of laptops to schools, and those are yet to materialize. Also, the North Rift region is one of the areas where many schools could definitely do with a lot more money, even before they get the laptops. We're now going to cross live to our senior reporter in that region, Mercy Kandia. She's been taking a reality check in that part of the country. Mercy, there's some very high expectations up there ahead of the budget, aren't there?
Yes, they are, Nancy. And indeed, the government has allocated 23 billion shillings towards the education sector. What the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, says, they submitted a 43 billion shillings to the government, and they expect the government to also, comply and put in leave allowances, commuter allowances. But the very high expectations throughout the country, and especially even here in the North Rift region, among the counties that have been considered marginalized, like like Turkana County, West Pokot County, even in Elgeyo Marakwet County, and especially in the villages. The expectations there is much more than the laptop debate. We have visited some schools that are in dire need of much more than just what everyone else has been talking about. And despite the fact that year in, year out, money has been allocated to the education sector, there is clear indication that much more needs to be done, especially in the villages. Take a look at a story we filed. A class is ongoing at Salabani Primary School in Baringo County. The challenges here very visible, but the thirst for knowledge precedes the constant disruptions of learning outside. Education, as they say, is the backbone of any society. So these students learn under this tree, which is for now a class. The script is the same in some schools across the country, who struggle with the challenges of insufficient teachers, classroom structures, and most important, books.
Lakini unajua sasa lazima ina affect wanafunzi. Hata KCV last year wamekuwa affected because haukuwa na darasa vizuri na matokeo haikuwa mzuri kulingana na vile sasa.
The 2014 budget allocation towards the education sector being 2.3 billion shillings this year. Part for recruitment of more teachers to improve the student-teacher ratio. But for some schools, especially in the villages, the annual allocation for this specific purpose is yet to be felt on the ground. In the remote areas, reading under a tree or in a class that is half destroyed.
Hata wasasi wenyewe tunaona wanajaribu tu kufanya juu chini ili tupate at least a site mahali yenye tutajenga
We further expect that within the budget there's money allocated for the physical structures in schools.
Over the weekend, Elgeyo Marakwet County hosted the National Day of the African Child, whose theme was a child-friendly, quality, free and compulsory education for all children in Africa, a statement that is yet to be realized fully. County governments under the new devolved system hoping to reach to these remote schools that clearly need more than just teachers.
We are also working hard to ensure that we supply things like sanitary pads to our schools, because at the end of the day, we don't want to see the child being disadvantaged.
The excitement in class at Salabani Primary School, an indication of a thirst in the village for education, that needs to be supported, empowered.
This money was 30 billion. Each time we suspend the laptops, it has reduced from 30 to 25. Now it is 17. Before the money goes to zero, let that money be used to employ teachers, instead of toying around with the laptop project, because either the laptop should be in schools by end of July, or we employ more teachers to mitigate the gap that is there.
The challenges that couple the education sector in the long run affect the performance of the students, and its effect is a student population that is yet to realize its full potential. Marcy Kandie, KTN, Uasin Gishu County.
Clearly some areas that need a lot more than just laptops. That being one of the things that was budgeted for in this Kenya's biggest budget ever. And Edith Kimani is going to take a look at some numbers that explain some other numbers.
That is precisely what I'm here to do. I'm looking at numbers that explain some of the figures you will hear Henry Rotich, the CS for National Treasury, speak out tomorrow. And so we'll begin with the biggest number that we've been hearing this entire week from Nancy Kachungira, the 1.77 trillion, which is what the government is planning to spend to finance this country in 365 days. Now, if you do the math right, you will find out that in one day it will cost the country of Kenya 4.489 billion shillings to run. So how much can 4.48 billion do? Well, I'll tell you what it does. It can provide medical insurance for police officers for an entire year. It can also buy equipment for police officers for an entire year as well. And this is actually half of what has been allocated for new roads. So 5 billion, well, if you round it off, is a really huge figure. So why are we seeing this figure? Why is it costing us so much? Well, I'll tell you why. The first and most obvious one is recurrent expenditures. This is how much it costs us to run the government on a day-to-day basis. As administrative costs, we've heard it said over and over again, the wage bill is going up, and this is actually going to account for, according to Treasury, 18.7% of the GDP. It does sound really terrible, but it's actually lower than last year's percentage, which was 20.4%. It is a bit hopeful, but it's nowhere close to the 12% which is recommended. And then we also have devolution. In 2010, we do remember that we promulgated the Constitution, and with that we got counties. Now this is going to cost us 226 billion. That's how much is being allocated towards the counties. It does seem like an astronomical figure, but the Commission on Revenue Allocation actually recommends 238 billion, and that is a bare minimum. They're saying that is the least that needs to be taken to counties in order for them to function properly. So obviously on a very tight budget. Let's also not forget about the 40% of all revenues collected the governors were asking for earlier. The second thing, security. Excuse me, it's no lie, and it's obviously quite obvious that for any stable economy to be sustained, it needs to be in a secure place. And so that costs money. The State of Department of Interior, together with the State of Department of Coordination and National Government, which both fall under Olelenku's docket, will cumulatively be getting 99.6 billion. Now add on to that, that's coming on in the next page. The National Intelligence Service alone is getting 17.4 billion. So a lot of money being taken into gathering information of events before they do happen, and defense getting 73.3 billion. All of those cumulatively will come up to about 189.7 billion shillings. That is a lot of money, but the question is, where exactly is the money going? Well, first of all, pay the police officers. It's also going to cost a pretty penny to give them medical insurance. 1.6 billion is what Treasury is saying. Recruitment of about 10,000 APs and police officers. You want to feel secure? Well, that's going to cost you 2.9 billion shillings. Leasing of new vehicles. Nancy Kachungera spoke about this earlier on in the week. That's 6.7 billion. Anti-poaching, buying equipment, control and command center, and the list goes on. It is very expensive to be in a secure country. Lastly, development. You want to drive on really nice roads. You want to make sure you get to work on time because the traffic lights are working. Well, guess what? It costs money. The Department for Infrastructure and the State Department for Transport, which both fall under Engineer Kamau's docket, will cumulatively get 169.1 billion. That's a lot of money. Just 20 billion shy of what the entire security docket is getting. But the reason why this is happening is because there are a lot of things that are going to be that are under construction, if you like. One of which is building of roads. Those nice roads we've been driving on, well, foreign financed roads are going to cost us this year alone 42.3 billion shillings. Ongoing construction of those roads. You want to go on a nice bypass, you're driving along Mombasa Road and you're wondering, when is this going to be completed? Well, when we get 41 billion shillings, because that's how much it costs to construct the ongoing, to make sure that the ongoing roads are constructed. We have road maintenance, making sure those roads don't have potholes is going to cost you 22 billion shillings, and decongestion of junctions. I'm not sure what that is, but it's going to be 1 billion shillings and 10 billion shillings to get us new roads. And of course, the Department of Agriculture, a lot of money being pumped into this as well, because we're seeing more acreage, especially under irrigation, and that's going to be about 29.3 billion shillings. So these numbers, when you hear them said tomorrow, they might not break them down for you like this, but now you know where the money is going. So Nancy Kachungera, tomorrow as you drive to work, 42.3 billion shillings.
I will think about that. That's a lot of shoes, isn't it? Well,
really?
Yeah, some people think in terms of shoes.
Well, this is also a lot of hospitals, and it's also a lot of...
Now you're just making me look shallow.
Well, it's also a lot of shoes as well. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you, Edith, for breaking that down. Certainly looking forward to hearing those numbers tomorrow as well. Right, let's turn our attention now to one of our neighbors. The South Sudanese rebels have agreed to release a Kenyan plane and its pilot detained in northern Jonglei state for the last 10 days. Deputy President William Ruto disclosed that the pilot and the impounded plane would return to the country soon. And as Patrick Amimo reports, President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have agreed to form a transitional government of national unity within the next 2 months.
Deputy President William Ruto represented President Uhuru Kenyatta during the 26th ordinary session of IGAD Summit on South Sudan in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. On jetting back, Ruto revealed that a Kenyan chartered plane that had been impounded by South Sudanese rebels in Uai in northern Jonglei state would be released. The plane was impounded early last week and its pilot detained on accusations of flying missions to assassinate rebel leaders.
We also managed to persuade the rebels to release a Kenyan plane and pilot who have been held for the last 10 days in rebel-controlled territory.
South Sudan plunged into civil war in December last year following the July sacking of Vice President Riek Machar and other top officials from government by President Salva Kiir. A deal signed last month for cessation of hostilities was flouted when Salva Kiir said it was executed under duress. This time round, IGAD ensured the peace deal signed has a time frame. It must be implemented in the next 60 days. After 5 hours of deliberations, the warring leaders agreed to a peaceful resolution of conflict and hindered an unconditional access by humanitarian agencies to supply food and medicines and a monitoring and verification mechanism of the implementation of cessation of hostilities.
They also agreed to sign on the matrix of the timeline of the activities within the 60 days time frame.
Kiir and Machar also agreed to have a national convention that will bring on board religious groups, civil societies, political parties and parties to the conflict within 60 days.
The commitment to the transition government of national unity is not a commitment of IGAD, it's a commitment of the leaders. They signed into the agreement themselves.
South Sudan is still experiencing intermittent skirmishes between the rebels and government troops. The 6-month conflict has killed an estimated 10,000 people and displaced 1 million others. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has moved in to investigate the controversial 15 billion shillings security contract awarded to Safaricom. This comes a week after the Parliamentary Committee on Administration and National Security ordered the suspension of that deal, which is meant to set up a modern security surveillance system in selected cities. The Anti-Corruption Commission's chairperson, Mumo Matemu, said that though no formal complaint has been raised, they were collecting intelligence reports on the contract.
We do not have to sit and wait for formal complaints. We also pick matters from political activity, from debates in Parliament, from investigative reporters, and follow intelligence leads and see whether a case comes out for investigation. So we are in the process of trying to do that.
The National Police Service is asking members of the public with any information concerning the death of Muslim cleric Mohammed Idris to come forward. The Sheikh, who was the chairman of the Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya, was gunned down yesterday morning outside his home in Likoni. His death has raised eyebrows after it did emerge that Idris relocated from Mombasa town to Likoni following death threats that he received.
And we are saying that the police, we are investigating, and immediately we arrest, we are going to inform you. And that's why we are urging the members of the public, anybody who has got any information, to come and assist the police. Because with the police, we cannot work alone without information which at least is going to lead to a clue of arrest. If you have any information, please come forward. And immediately our reports, we complete our reports, we are going to give you a brief on it.
Right, let's remind you of our big Q this evening. We're asking you, whether you think that the ODM party has treated Evans Kidero unfairly in the recent past. As we showed you earlier, CORD leader Raila Odinga and ODM leader Raila Odinga said that there was no rift and Evans Kidero is definitely part of the fold, although some parties may not see it that way. Let us know what you think.
22155 is the SMS number. You can tweet us as well at Kachungira, at Wilson_Mburu. Don't you go away. We have much more coming up, including the World Cup, biggest extravaganza.
Absolutely.
That's right, after the break.
Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're watching KTN Prime.
Now, the world's biggest footballing event begins tomorrow, and our very own Hassan Juma is in Sao Paulo in Brazil to oversee those, well, not to oversee, but obviously to observe those events. Let's go to him now.
Well, for you to appreciate the 2014 FIFA World Cup here in Brazil, you just have to look at the shops. I mean, everywhere you see the national teams that will be represented in this particular tournament are here. Look at, England, the England national team. I'm seeing Argentina, Croatia. Most of the shops here are trying to embrace the culture. They're trying to embrace the 2014 FIFA World Cup. They're trying to welcome this tournament at home because they feel that, in Brazil, football or soccer, as they call it, is a religion. They've loved their football. When you go to the shops, names like Neymar, it's a big name here. Neymar, who plays for Barcelona, is a big name here. They embrace the player. But when you look at the individuals, the population, they've really not embraced the tournament as individuals. They're not donning the national team colors. Maybe a clear indication that the World Cup fever has not really hit home yet. Maybe in, say, 10 hours time from now, we'll be able, when we go to the Sao Paulo main stadium where the World Cup tournament will kick off, maybe we'll be able to see most of these Brazilian fans donning the national colors. But right now, when you talk to them, they're saying it's a working day, and they are not yet in that World Cup spirit yet. They've not really embraced the spirit of the World Cup. Back at home in Kenya, if you are playing against Seleção, the Brazilian national team, we will be putting on the Harambee Stars national team colors. You are not putting on Brazil colors. Why?
Because I'm working today. I will put the shirt only tomorrow in the game to vibrate.
Is it illegal? Is it illegal for you to put on Brazilian colors while working in the offices?
Yeah. If I want, no problem. But it's not so good. Okay.
Why? But that means there's no patriotism.
Sorry.
It means you seem not to love Seleção.
Yeah, but in Nofsi, we need to be more formal, okay? Then
we'll keep you up to date on the goings on here. We'll be trying to follow all the 5 teams, all the 5 African teams, the likes of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, Ivory Coast. We'll try and keep tabs. The African favorites, Ghana, try to see how they fare on, and their fans try to see how they react, how they embrace the 2014 FIFA World Cup. I'm Hassan Juma reporting for KTN from Sao Paulo in Brazil.
Hassan Juma is having too much fun in Sao Paulo. I have to admit that. I envy him. Now, the World Cup, it's a big event. It's the world's biggest footballing event. And we shall take a very quick look at some of the interesting facts about the World Cup. Let's start with the fact that the competition has been played every 4 years since 1930, except in 1942 and 1946 because of the Second World War. Brazil, which is the host of this year's World Cup, has won 5 times and Brazil have actually won more than any other team in history, and it is the second time Brazil will be hosting the World Cup. The first time they held the World Cup was in 1950, but they lost in the final to Uruguay. And they have never won the World Cup while hosting it. That was the last time actually they held the World Cup in Brazil was in 1950. As I said, they lost to Uruguay in front of 174,000 spectators in the stadium alone. Now, let's look at the budget It's all about the budget this week, so we shall look at the budget that this World Cup has cost Brazil, 14 to 16 billion dollars. That translates to 1.2 trillion Kenyan shillings. This can easily take care of a very huge portion of the Kenyan budget. And this World Cup is more expensive than the last 3 World Cups combined. The last one in South Africa in 2010 cost about $4 billion. In 2006 in Germany cost about $6 billion. And the previous one before that, which was in South Korea and Japan, cost about $5 billion. You combine all that, it comes to about $15 billion. This is much more expensive than all those 3 combined. Now, some of the stadia are still incomplete, which has been a bit of a concern. And by the way, if you have been watching the news and you have been following this story, you will know that there have been protests in Brazil, mostly because this World Cup, and by the way, this figure is going to be way higher than this because of security concerns, the fact that some of the stadia are not complete. This is the amount that has been spent up until now. Let's move on to another subject, which is some of the rules and regulations since the 1930s. An interesting one here. India withdrew in 1950, and the reason that they gave for withdrawing was that, you know, the travel expenses and whatnot. But the Indian captain said that was a cover story. The real story was that FIFA had introduced new rules which ensured that everybody wore boots. In 1948, the Indian team went to the Olympics and they played barefoot. So FIFA came in and said, we cannot have this anymore. So in 1950, they said, new regulations, everybody has to be in playing boots. So 1950, India withdrew. They could not take the pressure of playing in boots. The football is the same size and shape as 1930. This ball has not changed. It is the same round shape and size since the 1930. It changes, the current ball is the Brazuca, which the dynamics of the ball change, but the size and shape have never changed. The goal line technology is going to be used for the first time. Now, what is goal line technology? We have seen a couple of cases where, you know, we are not sure whether the ball has gone into the net because whether the ball has crossed the line or not. We're going to have 14 cameras, 7 cameras facing each goal line, which means that every time the ball either crosses or does not cross the line, we're going to have a camera which is attached. All those cameras are going to be attached to one computer mainframe, which then transmits that data to a wristwatch, which is being worn by the referee, and it produces a buzzing sound, and it just tells the ref whether the ball has crossed the line or not. Let's move on to something else, which is the players. Roger Milla is the oldest player to have ever scored in a World Cup. He was 42 years in 1994 when he scored, and he's also the oldest player to have ever played in a World Cup. If you remember very well, he did a very interesting dance in 1990. Norman Whitesand is the youngest player to have ever played in the World Cup. He was 17 years in 1982, and the guy who the player who has had the most appearances is Lothar Matthäus from Germany, who has played in the World Cup 25 times. Ronaldo, the Brazilian one, has scored the most goals with 15 goals. That is yet to be surpassed. Phenomenal player. And the fastest goals was by Hakan Şükür from Turkey, which was scored in 2002. And he was playing against Ireland. Yes, he was playing against South Korea in the 2002 World Cup. He scored a goal after just 11 seconds. Just when you're about to blink, he scored. Most iconic goal was Maradona with the hand of God in 1982. I think we have that clip somewhere where Maradona rose to head the ball, but he was a bit too short, so he used the hand of God to help him score a goal against England. Let's see what happened in 1982.
Time now to get down to business, and let's begin with county funding. Despite concerns over the rate of funds absorption at the county levels, the devolved units will receive 226 billion shillings from the national government in the 2014-2015 financial year. Michael Karanja explains.
Budget 2014-2015. in association with ICEA Lion Group.
According to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, county governments are to receive a minimum of 15% of the previous year's audited financial accounts. However, in the 2013-2014 financial year, Treasury allocated 220 billion shillings to the devolved governments. This has been increased in the coming fiscal year, but analysts are jittery.
The main problem that we are facing is not the allocation of these funds, but is the absorption of those funds and the financial discipline in the counties. There's a lot of misuse of funds in the county system of government. And there has to be systems of making sure that there is accountability and that every single coin can be explained.
In a report from the Office of the Control of Budget, counties were found not to have absorbed 66.6 billion shillings. Of this, 13.1 billion shillings was meant for development projects, 9 billion shillings for recurrent expenditure, while 44.4 billion shillings lies in the revenue fund account. Analysts point to the fact that county governments lack proper policy structures to ensure development projects are allocated adequate resources.
You have 47 county leaders who want to be executives in their own way. And the problem with that is that you've already seen the number of impeachment motions that are coming up. You've seen how the MCAs are holding governors to ransom. And that again comes in with the issue of corruption.
The 6 billion shilling increment this year, however, falls short of the Commission on Revenue Allocations recommendations. Governors have also been pushing for increased allocations of at least 40% of national taxes, or a minimum of 238 billion shillings, to meet the needs of their governments. It remains to be seen how county governments will handle their new allocations in the next financial year to calm the jitters. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
Statistics indicate that every year over 800,000 Kenyans are released to the job market, but only 50,000 find the ever-elusive jobs. To bridge this, private sector players have come up with a portal aimed at enhancing employment and entrepreneurship chances in the country. Charles Gitonga tells us more.
Youth unemployment and consequential poverty remains Kenya's most urgent development challenge. They are seeing the government and the stakeholders in the private sector apply concerted effort towards sustainable solutions. With technology being leveraged on as a key driver to employment, Microsoft, in partnership with Homeboys Foundation and the Kenya Private Sector Alliance KEPSA, have rolled out Tuko Works, an employment portal that will support, among other things, entrepreneurship.
We strongly feel that this is, a transformative portal, that will help the Kenyan youth, develop himself or herself as they look into the future.
Statistics indicate that the youth constitute 80% of the country's unemployed population. The African picture is that 200 million young people of ages between 15 and 24 are jobless, representing 60% of the continent's population and 45% of its labor force. With solutions that leverage on technology such as Tuko Works, skill improvement and career guides are expected to be in line with the needs of the labor market.
The one-stop online portal linking job seekers, aspiring entrepreneurs and school leavers will complement the government's efforts in enhancing young people's employability.
Further to this, the Kenya Youth Empowerment Program, championed by KEPSA and the government for the last 4 years, is said to have bore fruits.
To date, a total of 12,993 youth have been trained.
Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
Eldoret Town in Uasin Gishu County is known as the home of champions in reference to athletics. But this time there will be some change. The town will convincingly come to an end whereby athletics will not be dominant. It's now time for World Cup. Let's take a look on how the residents in Eldoret have to say. Victor Gale with that report.
The World Cup bug is on the loose and everyone has been beaten by it, including residents of Eldoret Town, where athletics ranks high among all other sporting disciplines. Abraham Murray is a resident of Nandi County, but he was forced to travel for over 40 kilometers to Eldoret to purchase a decoder in readiness for the Brazil World Cup.
Mali yenye nimetengeneza inachukua watu karibu 500 na nina charge shilingi 50 kwa kila mtu.
Abraham is not the only one, as there are others who are also looking at the World Cup in economic lenses.
Tumeweka strategies kila mahali kuhakikisha tuko na enough staff
Most of the residents have called upon the county government to beef up security, considering most matches will be aired at night.
Madago, kama inawezekana tupatie tu screen moja hapo kwa hall. Town hall hapo.
Wase wanapenda mpira. Ndio sisi tumepanga tutakuwa tukiona kwa nyumba mpaka World Cup iishe.
While many showed which side they support, others have no idea about the World Cup.
Mimi napenda kusupport ball, ni msee wa Man U. Si mna support kwenda Brazil. Sababu naweza tupatia something like hizo zinaitwa nini? Hizo tickets.
The World Cup will kick off Thursday evening with host nation Brazil taking on Croatia. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
Time to wind up the bulletin, but not before we give you the results of our big question tonight. We did ask whether you think the ODM party has been treating Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero unfairly.
And let's take a look at the results. We've got 57% saying yes and 43% saying no. Taking a look at some of your messages. One here from Rest End in Busia. You say, yes, you do feel he has been treated unfairly. It's wrong for the former Prime Minister to pretend now when just last week Kidero was booed in his presence.
Richard Mwinga says Kidero is the source of his own troubles.
And another one here says, no, it's only a big issue because Baba is involved. That is just politics, and Kidero must toe the line.
Anthony Karoki says yes for doing what he was elected to do for Nairobians. Elections are all over.
Jabi from Nairobi says, yes, he was treated very unfairly, and now court want to pretend that they are supporting Kidero. Let him read between the lines.
There's a correction here from, this has nothing to do with Kidero's quiz question. This is honoring K. Konesi. Says the hand of God was in 1986 and not 1982. I accept that correction. Valid mistake.
Thank you for sending that in. And thank you also for watching KTN Prime. It's been great having you. Our sign language interpreter this evening was William Silla. I'm Nancy Kachingira. Have a good night.
I'm Wilson Buru. Don't you go anywhere, because Jeff Koinange Live is up next from here at the Standard Group Center. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Have a good night.